It's defined as an act of gender-based violence that results in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, or psychological harm. And women are mostly victims of this. Joining me is Mercy. Good morning.
Good morning, Brian.
I was in Lira a couple of years ago.
Yes.
And I was talking about, sexual and gender-based violence. And talking to a few men,
yes,
they tell me that women love to be beaten. They love to be harmed because when a guy doesn't, he's probably dating a one, Mundoro Masi, who is teaching him to be lovely, like Salvador, touching, slow. And so the woman is just saying, you're cheating on me if you don't harm me.
And that is the sad tale. You know, it's really sad to say that is true. If you look at the recent statistics on gender-based violence, you realize that at least 56% of the women think that it is okay for them to be physically abused, and compared to 44% of men. So that already tells you that there is a kind of societal acceptance of violence, and perhaps that's the reason why we still have a very high rate of domestic violence in the country. And you find that year in, year out, when you look at the police incident reports, gender-based violence is up there. It's not anywhere compared to the other crimes that are reported, at police. So part of the problem is deeply rooted in those kinds of beliefs that it's okay, for me to be beaten. And they only say that when it hasn't had adverse effects. And when it does, then that is when they come out to, report these cases or to speak against violence. But it's always easier to talk about it before it happens, or to imagine that this beating they're talking about does not involve, cutting off your neck or removing your skull, like what we've been seeing with the media.
What do you say to these women? When should they know the breaking point? For example, in relationships, we know if a guy cheats on you, flee for your life.
Yes.
If a guy slaps you, okay, you.com ladies, if a guy slaps you, you're like, oh my gosh, he will kill me. But for women who are there, they are poor.
Yes.
The man is, feeding them.
Yes.
They have no option, but usually to stay around.
Yes.
When do they know it is time to leave?
Brian, violence in any form or shape should not be acceptable. And when we talk about violence, there are very broad parameters. So we have physical violence, we have emotional or psychosocial violence, where somebody may not physically beat you, but psychologically or emotionally abuse you. There's sexual abuse, and also there's economic violence as well, when somebody withholds your finances or economically abuses you. But violence in whichever form or shape should not be accepted. So I cannot even tell you that there is a point where you should say enough is enough. I'll give you an example recently of a case that we saw where the couple was fighting. It was a simple fight between the two, and the gentleman just picked an object and hit the woman at the back of her head, and she died just like that. So you cannot, there's no perimeters to it. So we usually tell both women and men, because we also know there are men that are abused as well. I hope you're not being abused. So we usually tell them that you should not accept violence in any form, because we just cannot determine the outcome, and it really does have very adverse effects on the survivors.
You guys are operating a lot now in war-affected areas. Some parts are healing. The war is, we're getting people restored back into their homes, and lives are getting back.
Yes.
But just paint a picture for us, specifically in those areas. What happens? What is there?
Yeah. I think for post-conflict areas, it's quite unique in the sense that, when war has just occurred in a place, there's an erosion, of the social fabric. So you realize that the values degenerate. People have been used to violence. Some people have been abused during conflict. So they live with the effects. Part of the effects are that people then start to accept violence, because this is what they've been going through. Women have been sexually abused during the war by, probably the people that partook in the war. Men as well. We've seen stories of men who were also sexually abused, who were raped during the war. So in their everyday life, this plays in the way they relate with the people around them. That is why the rates of gender-based violence tend to be higher in post-conflict areas.
Yeah.
And for us in Uganda, both northern Uganda and also Karamoja sub-region, you realize that the rates are much, much higher because people are living sometimes with the effect. So, and then in these areas also there's a unique context to it. We have a category of people, survivors of violence, who were abused during the war. So part of the problem is that they haven't got redress. The other problem is that they've conceived probably children for the sake of women. They have children that were born from the war. And part of the problem is that some of them contracted diseases and have health, related challenges from the war as well. So in their everyday life, they have to cope with the impacts of this violence. So in these areas, there's a unique presentation of, gender-based violence, and it's usually very, very persistent. So even the boys who grew up seeing violence are likely to beat their wives, and the children that live through because they've seen that and they think it's okay.
Yeah.
And we've seen this in some of the cases we've handled in Gulu, where you're in a court of law and a child testifies to say the reason why they could not report about an incident of violence at home, maybe to their friends or to their teachers at school, is because they thought it was okay and it's happening in other homes as well. So you can see the kind of impact it has. So in post-conflict areas, it's quite unique, and the tales are quite higher than it is in other areas.
You're working on something, and clarify, if I'm giving wrong information, but yes. I think I was really excited about it when I got working with the UN to establish GBV courts.
Yes.
How do those work?
Well, for a while now, we, as institutions that have been working on issues around gender-based violence, we have lamented. And because year in, year out, imagine you're working on these issues every day, you're sensitizing communities, you're going to courts representing people, but the reports still show it is high.
Yeah.
So we started to ask ourselves, how can we stop lamenting and, deal with the issue of gender-based violence within, especially the former justice system. Exactly. Yeah. So UNFPA and the Norwegian Embassy supported FIDA, Uganda, and ActionAid to come up with a program that would support the judiciary to specialize gender-based violence. Part of the problem, Brian, is that right now in our courts of law, gender-based violence is clumped up with other crimes. So if there are challenges with the formal justice system, gender-based violence cases get affected as well. So you cannot expect, for example, a woman who has been brutally abused to come in open court and testify. Children who have been sexually abused. So there is no speciality, and within our courts there are competing priorities, because it's not just gender-based violence in court, there are murder cases, there's corruption, and there's all of these things. So we're thinking, how do we then move our judicial justice system to, kind of specialize GBV?
That's
to,
awesome.
To commit time within our system that where our judicial officers specifically hear cases of GBV. So it's not just about having the sessions, but it's also about us building the capacity of our judicial officers to be able to handle these cases in a way that better addresses the challenges that survivors face with the justice system.
Yeah.
So to make the justice system more friendly for children and survivors, and for the judicial officers to pay special attention to these cases. Yeah. And also for us to be able to support them to deal with the issue of case backlog.
Yeah.
Because imagine, Brian, we had sessions maybe every quarter around the country where we just hear cases of GBV, regardless of whether they're affecting women, children, or men. You'll realize that definitely the issue of backlog is going to go down.
Yeah, yeah.
And the judiciary, I think last week you saw the report on the state of the judiciary. They grapple with a lot of resource-related challenges. One of the exciting things about the program is in the sense that we're going to have resources that can support at least 11 districts to hold special sessions for GBV as a test case,
right,
for us to be able to document and see, is this workable? Can it be replicated in another part of the country?
So you're literally going to have, at least pilots in 11 districts.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Yes, so why we're doing this is we want us together with the judiciary to learn through this process and then see within our current system. Of course, having special courts like GBV courts is very expensive. It's very, very expensive because the bigger dream would be to have, you know, the way we have commercial courts, would have a GBV court, but we know that's a bigger dream, which we can't achieve overnight. But for now, within our current resources, we can have special sessions, and that will tackle part of the problem of backlog, that will tackle part of the problem about, you know, having a friendly system where people feel comfortable to report cases, because part of the reason why they don't report is because the cases will get stuck forever.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. So we're pretty excited about working together with other stakeholders, not just the judiciary, but also the informal justice system, which is very, very critical for us, because we know that most of these cases are taken to the clans. Most of these cases are handled at home. They're not, you know, people do not want to bring them to court, or even when they come to court, then they're discouraged from coming to be witnesses or to support the case. So we're trying to also build their capacity to be with us during these special sessions, to offer counseling, and also for them to appreciate the problem, and also to now become our champions at grassroots level in terms of changing perceptions, behavioral change, and all of that, for us to handle it, you know, more holistically, and to kind of bridge the gap between the formal justice system and the informal justice system. Yeah.
Mercy.
Yes, Brian.
Quite eloquent on this subject. I want to invite you back and we talk more, have some people call in and ask these questions.
Sure.
You know, it's very sad. I was literally traumatized when I was in this area, and people were telling me, oh, it's okay. I'm like, it's not okay.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And while men, we are responsible for inflicting this violence, it does not mean it's okay.
No, it's not.
Because I've seen a man who was beaten by his wife, and it was not funny. So I think it was not funny.
No, it's not funny
and
at
the
all.
same, if you do it to a woman, it's even worse. So if there's a special GBV court, then that's going to be, I think, it's going to help you a lot. Like the Equal Opportunities Commission that has its special sessions, and they do that, and they go to districts. I think this is awesome.
Yes, sure. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Mercy
Munduro.
Munduro.
Please pronounce it well.
Mercy Munduro from FIDA.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
Thank
and I'm
you
looking forward to having another session to speak about these issues.
Yes.
I want to hear from the men as well.
And if you have, you know, story to share, talk to us. Just you can inbox us morning at NTV, and you can also inbox me. This is the first time I'm doing this because I'm passionate about this particular subject. Brian Mlondo is my Facebook name. You'll see a handsome guy there. Just, you know, inbox me, and we can share these stories and bless someone. Okay. That's your everyday life this morning. Let's take a breather. When we come back, we're going to look at the world of sport with Darren. Stay with us.